What up, what up, what up, what up? This is Michael Rayford, Word for Word, How Many Works Educator. And I'm excited about today's show because I got an old buddy who's going to be joining me, Mr. Robert Yarbrough. Can you say what's up to the people?
What you folks doing out there today?
I'll tell you.
I don't like the fact you use the word old.
Well, I think the gray, tells
Yeah,
the
yeah,
story, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
The gray tells the story. But I'm happy that you were able to, because I know you're a busy man with your schedule with the restaurants and whatnot, to join me to talk about this thing of entrepreneurship. So welcome to Word for
Thank you,
Word.
thank you,
And
sir. Thank you, sir.
when I was thinking about this interview, I remember some years ago, and this was after I graduated from college, and we were sitting on I don't know if it was your back porch or your parents' back porch.
It was my back porch over on LeGrand Boulevard.
And we were talking about the Billionaires Boys Club.
Yes, sir.
And this is something that you've been, if you will, cooking for a very, very, very long time. This has just been your mentality of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
So let me ask you this first question.
sure.
Have you ever had a job where you were an employee?
I have, yes. Actually, two. I think
Two.
two. Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
talk about those for a second.
Okay.
Just tell me what they were real quick.
I worked for Builder Square. You remember Builder Square? Builder Square was like
I
the
remember.
forerunner of Home Depot. Can you hear me?
Right.
And so
Yeah, I can hear you.
I worked on the truck delivering um, lumber and bricks and all of that for a little while at Builder Square, and I also worked at God, where did I work at? Oh, True Green Kimlon. I worked at True Green Kimlon
That's a blast from the past.
for about 3 or 4 minutes. And yeah, so I did.
So tell me, because now today you know that you were just meant to be your own boss, be an
Sure.
entrepreneur. So what was going through your mind when you were working for those two companies? Just what was going through your mind? What was the mindset? Because of course there was a shift.
Hmm.
So what was going through your mind at that time?
Actually, in getting those jobs, I settled for something other than what I knew I needed to be or wanted. Because from a very early age, as you said, we're old friends, so you know my parents. Um, my father, when I was in high school, uh, told me and my sisters that we couldn't work. Your job is school. And the problem with that is everybody was walking around in suede Pumas and had the fly gear and they were working at Taco Bell or Noggles or Burger King or whatever, and I wasn't able to do that. And you can't work it. So the first my first dive into entrepreneurship, I didn't know what I was doing. I just know that I needed money, and I started cutting grass and shoveling snow. And I was like, okay, well, I can just somehow not do as much manual labor through this and multiply myself, then I can make more money. And so I had watched a movie that had Gary Coleman in it, where Gary Coleman lived in the train station and he had the little carts where you would rent to have people take their luggage back and forth. And I said, I can do that. So what I did was I borrowed money from my father. And I said, hey, Dad, now mind you, back then our mortgage was about $350. I said, Dad, I need to borrow 150 bucks. And he said, sit down. So I sat down. He said, now you said borrow. Tell me what you need the money for, when you can pay it back, and what steps are you going to take in order to pay it back. And if in fact you're not able to, what's your fail safe? And I ran it down to him what I was going to do. And he said, okay, um, 2 weeks before school starts, I want my $150. He gave it to me. And I went to the garage sales and bought some lawnmowers. And I told my friends, I said, listen, here, guys, if you come cut grass with me, I will pay you $75 a week, no matter how many lawns you cut. You cut one lawn, I'm still going to pay you $75. You cut 100 lawns, I'm going to pay you $75. And they're like, that's all right. We're down. I said, but here's the ticket. Whoever cuts the most lawns, my mom's going to drive us up to Great America, and I'm paying for everything for the day. So I get my water bottle and I get my notebook and I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I hit the street. Knock, knock, knock. Mr. Smith, hi, my name is Robert Yarbrough. I live right down the street. I go to Eastwood High School. I'm playing football over there, and I'd like to raise some money so I can get some mouth guards, some shoes, some gloves, a couple of elbow pads, things like that. So if you'd let me cut your grass today, it'll be $15. But if you let me cut your grass every week, it's only 10. Sure, son, cut it. Write their name down, write their address down, and I'd leave. And they go, wait, whoa, you gonna cut the grass? Yes, we'll be right back. And I did that. And I did that. And I went from house to house to house to house. And by the end of the week, I would have $500-600 in my pocket. After paying everybody, I'd have maybe $300 or $400 in my pocket. And I remember people thinking that I sold drugs because I had money. And I paid my father back, and I took a couple of guys to Great America. And when they found out what it was I was doing, they started trying to, well, what kind of lawnmowers, So
They wanted to duplicate it.
that was my trip, and from that point, I realized that I don't want to be in a situation. I mean, not just from that point, but after going into interviews for jobs that I knew I was qualified for, that I knew I could do well at, that I wanted badly. I'd go to these interviews and I interviewed well, and I would come home and the offers that they would give me, I would sit and I don't know if it was anger or what it was, but I knew that I was upset because somebody was telling me I was only worth $6 an hour. But I'm Robert E. Yarbrough Sr.'s son. You don't get it. I'm worth more than that. I can bring value. Yeah, but you're only worth $25,000 or $30,000, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't. And so when I took those other jobs, it was a segue from what I knew I wanted to do anyway. I didn't know how I was going to do what I wanted to do, but I knew what I wanted to do.
Now, you brought up two really excellent points in that story. Number one was when you went to your dad, and I know your dad, right? I know what type of person he is and how the interaction was when I first met him. And that goes for your mom as well.
Right.
But when you first asked him for some money, there was a conversation, there was an expectation, there was a deal made at that point in time.
Right.
So that conversation, but then also the fact of when you went and interviewed and you said, no, wait a minute, I am Robert Yarbrough Sr.'s son, so I know my worth, I know what I'm capable of doing. Do you think there has been those two things have been lost? Because I remember when we were younger, like you said, cutting grass, selling lemonade, shoveling snow, paper route, all these things were entrepreneurial.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you get a little bit older or you get in high school, you're told to get a job and go work.
Right.
Get a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
So those two stories, do you think that has been lost in this world today?
I think that in itself has not been lost, but there's been a paradigm shift. Okay. Before, as a young person, we didn't have access to tools and instruments of wealth from a young person's standpoint. So we did manual labor, or we had some type of a hustle where we bought newspapers and flipped them, or whatever the case may be. Today's work ethic is different, and it's our fault as the X generation. It's our fault because we knew we weren't going to do what our parents did, the baby boomers and so forth. We weren't. There was no such thing as a good job to us. A good job was the one you made. So in doing that, we taught our children that you don't need anybody else's idea to further your financial gain. And our children took it a little bit further. I was just talking to about this with a friend of mine who's also an entrepreneur. His name is Charles Hobbs. It's not that that's been lost. It's been changed. Access to wealth is easier for kids today. I can get my iPhone, put it up here, make a little dance, tell a little joke, get 100 million people following me, and Gatorade will pay me. You see what I'm saying? So the hustle's a little different, but access to wealth is a little bit different. And it's the same thing in the world of hip hop and entertainment. Those guys who were making mixtapes and going to radio stations saying, please pay this, or selling them out the trunk of their car, they don't have they didn't have the access to the tools and the money the kids today. The kids today go in their bathroom, get a microphone, drop a record, put it on TikTok, iTunes, Spotify, Apple Tunes, and they got street. The young man, what's his name? Soldier Boy.
Yes.
Soldier Boy had a $25,000 check. It was $50,000. He chopped it in half, gave them their money. He had a $25,000 check. Got up, went to school the next day because he put it on and it went viral and with ringtones and so forth. So no, I don't think it's been lost. I think that it's been changed just
Okay.
a bit.
Okay. So I've been on this financial literacy journey for some years now, and one of our initiatives is called E2E, and you see the shirt here, Make the Move E2E, and it's employee to entrepreneur. And so right now, 62% of people would love to be their own boss and become an entrepreneur. At what point, and I know that you knew you wanted to be an entrepreneur, but really, what was the day when you made the biggest bet on yourself to become an entrepreneur?
I was married, my ex-wife, and she was pregnant, and we needed some things, and we needed another car. Not wanted, needed. It didn't matter what it was, four wheels and engine. We needed. And I did what I had seen on TV. I went to the guy who was my boss, and I said, "Hey, I need these things. Can you give me $5,000 and I'll make it up or pay it back?" And he said, "Well, let's do the math. How's that going to look?" And I was like, "Yeah, that doesn't look like that." I said, "Okay, well, I need your job then, so I can make more money." And he wasn't having that. And so I said, "Well, the only way I can do this is that I work for me." And just to simplify my world now, if my daughter, I have three kids in college. If my daughter says, "Hey, Daddy, I need this," I look at what I'm doing, what I'm responsible for, as far as my bills are concerned. And I say, "Okay, I need this much more in order to do that without changing anything about my lifestyle." So I have to go out and hustle up one more sandwich a day. I got to go up and hustle up one more cleaning job a month, or I got to go up and hustle up. I got to flip a building, or I got to get a stream of revenue coming in through rent or something, and that takes care of it. And I was like, where else can you do that but working for yourself? You can't go to the bank of your job and say, I mean, you can get a loan from a credit union, but you still have you're trading moments of your life, literally, as the time ticks away. You're trading moments of your life for something tangible, and it's not exponential. It's not you're not going. Nobody's going to hire you and pay you enough money to where you don't need them, because if they did, you wouldn't need them. So they're not going to say, okay, if you come in and work 4 hours today, but work 5 hours tomorrow, I'll double your pay and then it's not going to work that way. You're just going to get
Right.
the same amount of money.
Right.
So at that point, I knew. I went home and I said, hey, listen, I got to quit my job and I'm going to go into sales. It's 100% commission, but it's betting on me. And she looked at me and said, okay, but we have a mortgage. And I said, don't worry about it. Even though I was terrified, I still knew that I could at least do as well as I was doing working for somebody else. And the chances of me doing better were greater. So I had to do it.
Now, do you think that's like probably the biggest reason most people don't become an entrepreneur because they're not, like you said, you knew that you could do as well as an employee, not being a W-2. You knew that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's an unknown that you were not afraid to face. Do you think that's like the biggest challenge that people have when it comes to becoming an entrepreneur?
I think that what you're doing as far as financial literacy is concerned is a phenomenal thing because you're changing the culture. And I think that the biggest hindrance in becoming an entrepreneur, especially in our culture, is that it's not it's not prevalent in our culture. When it used to be, when you talk about things like the Black Wall Street, and you talk about Madam Walker, and you talk about those individuals. See, but those individuals in the culture that we came, like I said, it's a paradigm shift. They had no choice.
Right.
They weren't invited to the party. They had to create. You know what I mean? They had to create
Yep.
their own.
Right.
Once they were invited to the party, we got the golden handcuffs on, and people started telling their children, get a good job, go to college, get a skill, trade your time and your life for a paycheck, get you some good benefits. And it was funny because I don't know who it was in my family. I can't remember who it was in my family, but I had told them, and I'm not going to say how much I made, but I made what I thought was all the money in the world at the time. And I told them, I said, look what I made. 3 months, I made what would have took me 4 years to make. And they said, yeah, but you don't have any benefits. Yeah, but I can pick up the phone and call and buy any benefits I need and still have more than I was, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And I think it's the culture. I think it's the culture. We're not brought into a culture of entrepreneurship. I was. My father was an entrepreneur. My uncle was an entrepreneur. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. My mother's an entrepreneur. I mean, everybody around me, it was the norm. It was my safety net. I'm used to hearing about people saying Dial closed, Lucy Technology got bought out by Alcatel. I lost my job of 15 years. I got a doctorate degree. Uh, I don't understand how people go to a job every day not knowing if they have a job.
Right.
When I wake up every day, I can do as long as I can speak the language, and even if I can't, I got Google Translate nowadays. As long as I can get along with it, I got a ways to making some money and taking care of my family. I can't rely on anybody else's skill set for my livelihood.
Okay, good. Now, you have reinvented yourself several times. So you sold cars, and you were
Hmm.
you were really good at that. So let's talk about the transition from selling cars to the financial industry. How did that happen?
Um, well, like most kids, I watched a movie called Wall Street way back when, and I went to my dad again. Like I said, it has to do with your environment as well. I went to my dad and I said, Dad, so let me get this straight. This guy was poor because his dad was a mechanic, and he did all this stuff. I said, where did he go wrong? He said he broke the law. I said, what part about what he did was illegal? He said, this part. I said, well, if he hadn't have done this part, then he gets to keep all the money and stuff. He goes, yeah. Okay, that's what I want to do. I didn't have any uncles, aunts, nephews. I didn't have anybody that was going to pass away and leave me $1 million. I didn't have it. Uh, and your goddaughter had just been born, and I'm like, I got to make sure. So it was always there. It's just I needed to get to a point where I could relate to that, where I could work in that industry. It was never something that's different. And one of the other things that my father came to me and said, he noticed that I was doing pretty well in selling cars. And he said, it doesn't matter what you're selling. The product doesn't matter because you're not selling the product. You're selling yourself. You're selling your ability to service the customer, meet their needs, and give them a guarantee of accountability. So, whatever it is that you're doing, as long as you make sure you magnify those things, it doesn't, there is no difference between the financial world and what I did selling Bentleys. There's no difference. There's no difference between the financial world selling Bentleys and what I do now. The only difference is the product.
So you leave the car business, you go into financial
Yep.
services, and typically, uh, one of the reasons why we do what we do is because about 80% of the population does not get called by the big major financial services companies. You know, those who typically work paycheck to paycheck are not getting those phone calls because they typically don't make enough money.
True.
So you're working for one of these big firms now.
Hmm.
What's that experience like?
Um, well, first it was shocking. I had no point of reference to what I was going to be doing. I was fortunate to have been hired by a guy named John Abrahamovich, who saw some worth in what I brought to the table. Uh, it was, oh my God. I used to read the newspaper in the financial section of the Chicago Tribune and the Sun Times when I was a kid and try to figure out stocks and all that stuff. And I thought that everybody in the industry were geniuses. And once I got in there, I realized that they're just working. um, but what really shocked me was I had a plan, but not a business plan. I had a desire, but not a marketing plan. And so what I said is, I'm going to hit lawyers up, doctors, people who I thought made a lot of money. And I realized that, especially in the African American community and with women, um, no matter how sophisticated we get, we don't know how the money game is played. And the big firms, like you were saying, the firm I worked for was the largest, biggest in the world, don't cater to that. In fact, they changed the pay plan so that it's not even advantageous for somebody like me to actually work with that. And I said, well, wait a minute, there's a niche there then. I remember speaking to you about it those years ago, saying, we got to do something, man. We have a responsibility to let these kids know that there's something else other than bouncing a basketball, singing on the radio, or they don't have to be a doctor or a lawyer. There's other options, and there's other things out there other than a dollar. There's something called the yen. There's something called you know, man, we really got to figure this thing out. And so I pursued that. And so it was, it was daunting. Working there was I felt like a fish out of water, even though that's what I wanted to do. Out of 127 brokers, I was the only African American in the building. I was the youngest in the building, and everybody, until I brought in some money, everybody thought, they just ignored me like I was invisible. So I, it was a scary proposition. It was scary.
So now we're going to fast forward. We're going to talk about today. I like the shirt.
I like that.
Let's talk about RVs. Yeah, I'm noticing everything. I'm
The
noticing
Hogie
everything.
hustler.
And so when people think about becoming an entrepreneur, there are definitely some challenges because it's like, okay, well, first I have to change my mindset because I've been an employee for 20, 30 years and I think a
Hmm.
certain way. And so now I want to become an entrepreneur. There's a mind shift there. I don't know anything about marketing. What business should I go into? What about technology? All these things that could be challenging and could be hurdles for an individual. You choose to go into the restaurant business. So let's talk about RVs, home of the Hogie, and where did this come from? And let's talk about the path thus far with the restaurant group.
Okay, well, RV's Home of the Hoagie is a modernized version of what my grandfather and my great uncle did almost 6 decades ago. Home of the Hoagie was founded by Roosevelt McCarthy, who's my great uncle, my grandfather's little brother, and my grandfather on the south side of Chicago. It became a Chicago staple. In my life as a financial advisor, I noticed that I was pretty good on the phone getting people to do something, but I was even better in person doing these seminars and talking and teaching. So I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to bring a bunch of people into this office and do a seminar, making money growing trees, financial independence for today's African American, financial independence for today's woman. And that's how I'm going to get my clients. Instead of making 500 phone calls a day trying to sell a stock, I made 500 phone calls a day trying to gain a relationship. And so I did that. And in doing that, I would go to my uncle's restaurant and say, hey, I need hoagies sliced up instead of getting pinwheels so I can have them in my, and that way I give my family some business, And so one day, I think I'm doing great. I'm driving a big Benz, got a BMW, traded that in for the Bentley, and I pull up to my uncle's shop wearing my Armani. I'm like, hey, uncle, I need to get these sandwiches going. And he, look at you, boy. Look at you. You're a hard worker, but I don't know. I said, what you mean? He said, I've been working hard all my life, and I just don't know what you're gonna do about yourself. I said, well, I come work with you, uncle, but I need to make some real money. He said, come here, let me show you something. He opened up his checkbook, and I said, I did the same thing. He said, what do you mean? I said, when I said I'm gonna work in the financial industry, I put a $50 million deposit in my checking account, and I wrote myself a check for $10 million and said, one day I'm gonna cash this. So that's my checkbook I look at and go, when I hit that number, I know I did what I said I was gonna do. He said, this is my checkbook. And I looked at it.
He's talking about for real.
Right. I said, you didn't go to ninth grade. He said, yeah, but I got doctor's degree money. I put in leave of absence and decided that because my family was in that business, I would love to carry on the legacy. My mother and my father had a catering company, and my mom was a cake decorator and baker at the time. So it's always been there. I met Dick Portillo. I met a number of other guys in the restaurant business. And once again, my father had convinced me when I was selling Jeeps that there was no difference between selling Jeeps and selling Rolls Royces and Bentleys. I said, well, why open up a hot dog stand when I can build the legacy of my family by making RV's Home of the Hoagie a premium place and putting them everywhere? To me, there's the same amount of work in building 5 premium locations than working my butt off in one little hole in the wall. To me, it's the same thing. So that's what I did.
That's good stuff, man. Now, how many locations do you have right now?
Plainfield, Oswego. We're building right now in Aurora at the Fox Valley Mall. We're breaking ground in Olympia Fields as we speak, and we just wrote the deal for, oh God, what's the name? South Holland and Hazel Crest. So by the end of the year, we should have 7 open.
That's good stuff. Now, let me ask you this question, because becoming an entrepreneur can be scary. And so, you've got that as a W-2 employee, you have a safety net.
Sure.
Like you have that check coming every 2 weeks or once a month, whatever it may be.
What? Wait. I'm so sorry, Mr. Rainford. I apologize. You have the semblance of a safety net
True, true, true.
because you don't control the bank account that check comes from. You can go to the checking account and cash that check, and it'll bounce just as quick as. So I understand, but yes, you have that
What you think, exactly.
right.
What have been some of the biggest challenges for you as an entrepreneur, and what did you learn from those challenges?
Um, Public perception of what it is we do. Have you ever seen those memes where it says what my mom thinks I do, what the public thinks I do, what I really do?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of them. Uh, the establishment, whatever that may be, whether it's the finance world, banking, whatever the case may be, the establishment. Um, Let me say this: I don't make excuses. I've tried my best throughout life not to make excuses. But that being said, when you still have in this country the ability for there to be a first black whatever or the first female whatever, that should give you an understanding of exactly where we stand still. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
In the 21st century, we still have the first black Supreme Court justice. Why is that even a thing?
Right.
So when you go in and the perception that people tend to have when they see um, the trappings of success, not success, they see the trappings of success. They see a nice car or whatever the case may be, is they think that it came by the easiest route. You got lucky, you hit a lick, somebody won something, that it didn't come from hard work, sweat, tears, blood, intelligence, network. It didn't come from that. And I don't say that everybody has it, but the generalized consensus is that that's. I had a guy who lives in Rockford who's an entrepreneur himself that I didn't grow up with, but I've known him throughout the many years that we've been here. Uh, and he said something. And I was trying to get him to come on board to help me do what I was doing because I needed his skill set. And I said, "Look what I'm doing. I'm trying to show him." And he said, "You've always had money." I'm like, "You? I don't know who you're talking to, but I've
Right.
always worked. I've never had." He said, "Oh man, you've always had money." And I'm going, "No, I've always worked. And this is, you know." And so that's one of the biggest hurdles because through hard work and faith, anything's possible. Let me say this. I know I'm carrying on, but let me say this. This is important for me. There's not one successful person that you run into. Not Bill Gates, not Jeff Bezos, not Elon Musk, not one that you can say, give me the blueprint for success. Because every and each one of them that started off doing what it is they're doing that made them successful was told that they were doing it wrong. You can't make computers in your garage. You got to have $1 million facility. You got to have a clean room. You got to have science. You can't do it. Okay, well, you want to help me? No, because you guys are crazy. You can't sell software because IBM's the only place that's going to buy it. You can't do it. You can't sell books online because you have to pay for the post office. You can't do it. Every one of them was told that they're doing it the wrong way. They had to cut their own path. They had to make sure they were pushing through. And it was an exact opposite of what would make other people successful. But what they can tell you, the difference that they can make is they can tell you what the habits that they had were that made them successful. They can say, no matter what happened, I worked every day to further my dream. Whether it was an idea I had and wrote it down, whether it was I moved 2 inches or I moved 2 feet, I still moved towards whatever the goal was I was going through, no matter what. If I was sick in bed, I opened up my book, I made a phone call, I did something to further my dream. whatever that was. They can tell you that. They can't tell you the path to greatness. They can't. None of them can. Not one.
That's good stuff. What do you think about, and I know you've heard this before, you are the average of, what is it, the 5 people you spend the most time with? So if you hang out with 4 millionaires, you'll be the fifth. Or if you hang out with 4 people who make $50,000 a year, you'll become the fifth. Or whatever it is, but you are the average of the 4 people you hang around the most. What do you think of that concept?
That's for the medium. That's for the people who I think that there's some truth in that, but it's not based on the hustle that people have. I don't know if you remember, at True Green Chemlot, I came up with this saying. When I went to Morgan Stanley and all those places, I had a plaque made, and the plaque was I would ask people. In fact, when I do seminars and stuff now, I ask people. I said, "What's the biggest lie in business and in success and stuff? What's the biggest lie? Do you know what it is? The biggest lie is good things come to those who wait. Biggest lie. Everybody says that. Robert says good things come to those who wait, but only what's left by those of us that hustle. Because if you're sitting around waiting for something good to come by, all you're going to get left is what I leave you. Because I'm not going to wait for anything. I'm going to go out and get it. You know what I mean? I have to. And so, yeah, people who strive for success tend to be around other people who strive for success. And even if they don't become financially successful in what they're trying to accomplish, people who strive for a certain thing try to put people around them that are doing the same things. When you start to put when you start to prioritize those who aren't on the same path, when you start to prioritize your time and spending it with those who aren't moving forward, then you'll notice that you will be the medium of your surroundings. Birds of a feather flock together.
Absolutely. So as we start to wind down, I'm going to ask you one more question.
Sure.
What would you say to those who want to become an entrepreneur and, for whatever reason, they haven't made that move yet, but they come up and ask you, whether it's at one of your workshops, but they say, I want to become an entrepreneur. What can you tell me? What advice could you give me? What would you say?
I would quote two people that nobody on this planet would ever think that I would quote. And I've been waiting to do this in a public medium for a very long time. Because when I heard it, it shocked me to no end of where it came from. Mike Tyson.
Whoa.
Yeah. Everybody made the assumption that Mike Tyson was a meathead. He was. He was an animal. You throw him in there, here, fight for your money. Knock it out. Boom, boom, boom. But they asked Mike Tyson if he enjoyed uh, fighting. He said, I do, but I don't enjoy the business of fighting. I don't enjoy what I had to do in order to fight. I hate running. He said, I'm 5 foot nothing. I'm 200 and something pounds, and I have to run. My knees, my back hurts, my neck hurts. And he said, well, how'd you do it? He said, discipline. Discipline is doing what you hate like you love it. Blew my mind. As simple as it was, I'm like, Mike Tyson? And then there's another guy that I've made fun of quite a bit. Steve Harvey. Steve Harvey told a story, and I would tell anybody interested in entrepreneurship the same story. Steve Harvey talks about this guy who packed up his parasailing gear, and they were telling the guy how to pack his parasailing gear just right. You have to fold it just so, and you have to wrap the cord just like this, and make this kind of a knot, not that kind of a knot, and put it on your backpack like this, because he had looked up and he saw all these people just sailing in the sun, and it was just beautiful. And they said, okay, now we got to climb up that mountain up there, that cliff. And so he worked his butt off to get up that cliff with this backpack that he packed just so, and he got to the top of the cliff, and he's looking around, and people were behind him, and he came to the realization that in order to successfully sail like those people there, he had to jump. He couldn't crawl back down. He couldn't stand on the ground. You know what I mean? He couldn't run real fast. He had to jump.
Had to jump.
So if there's something that you've been thinking about doing, there is no substitution for being prepared. None. I commend people who do that. But if you're constantly trying to be prepared, then you're always going to be getting ready to, about to, trying to, we making moves to put something together to.
What had happened was.
All right, don't do it. Just do it. Do it. You want to do it? Do it. You know, you want to sell a hot dog? Go to Jewel, get some hot dogs, go outside, sell some hot dogs. I mean, do it. You can figure out the rest later. There's no substitution for persistence, and there's no substitution for taking that leap. You want to sail? Jump.
That is good stuff, my brother. I'm going to tell you, it has been a pleasure. This has been a conversation a long time coming. Much continued success to RV's home of the Hogie. You know, you're blessed, man, but I know you work hard. You've been working hard for a very long time. So
Absolutely.
I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. And going to get you back, and we'll talk about some other things as well. But I do appreciate you coming on the show, Mr. Robert Yarbrough Jr. Have a great time.
Can I say something before we go?
Yeah, you can say one more thing.
To everybody within the sound of my voice listening to Mr. Rayford and his word for word, and you know who he is as an educator, you know who he is as a financial literacy expert, there can be no greater gift you can give yourself other than faith than to educate yourself on what's available to you for your financial stability. There is so much out there that you don't know about that's not scary, that's not exotic, that's simple tools that you can use to further your life and happiness and your children's life and happiness and give yourself a basis for financial success. And he has the key. He has the key, and I've seen him for years trying to give it away. He's trying to give it away. And there's no other, I mean, if you don't want to talk to him, talk to somebody. Get yourself a book, ask the questions. It's not hard. And the one thing I was talking to him about before we came on air was this. When you go to the doctor and the doctor says you've got a melanoma, you don't go to medical school to figure out how to treat it. You go to an expert, you educate yourself just as much as you need to know to make a good decision on which expert to use, and you go with it. This is the same thing. Enjoy your life. Be a teacher. Be a salesman. Be an entrepreneur. Be whatever it is you want to be, a lawyer, doctor, a politician, whatever. Learn as much as you have to know to make the right decision to pick the person with you and let them help you do what you need to do for your finances. That's all I want to say. You're doing a great job, Michael. I appreciate you.
Appreciate my brother. You get outside, enjoy this great day. And I'm going to bring the family to RV so we can eat sometime real soon, my man.
Bring it on, brother.
All right. You take care, man. Thank you very much. Appreciate you. All right, brother.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
You too. All right.